All right, guys. So today I wanted to just talk about a team that I really can't understand what they're doing. And I don't want to turn this into a roast session of the Atlanta Falcons, but unfortunately, I'm guessing that's what this video is going to be. And we're just going to kind of go through the past year and try and understand if there is any type of vision for the future with this team, with the front office, what they're thinking. Because, guys, I'm going to lay it all out there. And normally, when I look at an NFL franchise, I can get like a general gauge on where they're trying to go. But with Atlanta, I just have no clue. So the first thing I want to show everyone is like their last 3 or 4 years. We know they had Matt Ryan. He wins the MVP in 2016. They blow the huge lead. They make the playoffs in 2017. 2018, 2019, they're completely lost seasons. They're 7-9. They're treading water. 2020, they go 4-12. They decide to bring Matt Ryan back. They go 7-10. And then this past year, inexplicably, they go 7-10. And inexplicably meaning they should have been a lot worse. And now they're in a position to where we don't know what Desmond Ridder is because they didn't allow him to play enough. And they also don't have a good enough draft pick to where they could draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. Now, maybe one of those guys falls to them, but even in the event that a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young fall to them, what is Desmond Ridder? We don't know because they played Mariota too much, who is just a complete dead-end stopgap quarterback. There was no reason Mariota should have been playing for as long as he did, and I just have no clue what happened to the Atlanta Falcons in 2022. If you are the Falcons going into 2022, you've got some main goals. Develop your young weapons. You invested 2 top 10 picks into Kyle Pitts and Drake London. What ends up happening? They do the exact opposite. They're a massive run-oriented team. If you actually look at the stats, they had a total of 415 pass attempts versus 559 rush attempts. This is with back-to-back drafts, drafting a tight end number 4 overall, and then drafting a receiver number 8 overall. 2 skill position pass catchers inside the top 10, and you're running the ball more than you're throwing the ball in modern NFL. What is going on? So let's just look at the schedule. And again, if you're a Falcons fan, if I was an Atlanta Falcons fan, I would say my mindset is, let's see what Desmond Ridder is. Let's develop our young offensive weapons, and let's get a top 5 pick. And you know what? If Desmond Ridder is so good that we don't get a top 5 pick and he's our future, so be it. That's good too. But it can't be, we don't know what Desmond Ridder is, but also we don't have a top 5 pick, which is exactly what happened. They didn't play Desmond Ridder long enough to see if he's actually a legitimate NFL quarterback. And then they also weren't bad enough to secure a top 5 pick and possibly get Bryce Young or one of the top quarterbacks. So, looking at their schedule, they start off with 2 close losses. They end up beating Seattle, and then there's a few games I just want to look at. Week 4 versus Cleveland. This is like a tipping point for the Falcons. They're 1-2. They're at home facing Jacoby Brissett. Marcus Mariota goes 7 of 19 for 139 and an INT, and they somehow win? It's like they're doing a disservice to the future of their franchise by winning this game because it's just enabling Mariota to start more games. It's all run the ball, run heavy, and they win this game and they improve to 2-2. After that game, they end up losing at Tampa Bay. They beat San Francisco at home 28-14. Marcus Mariota has 14 total pass attempts, and they improved to 3-3 with that win. By the way, it doesn't help the fact that the NFC South is such a bad division. You've got teams like Atlanta and Carolina thinking, maybe we could win the division. Of course, it doesn't matter if you win the division. In terms of the playoffs, we know the team that did win the division, Tampa Bay, got completely slaughtered the second they stepped into the 2022 playoffs. Just going back to their schedule, they get annihilated by Cincinnati. That was not a competitive game. I believe they were down 28-0 early in the second quarter of that game. Then they beat Carolina at home 37-34 in overtime. That would have been a good game to lose if you're talking about getting a better pick and possibly switching to Desmond Ridder. They lose back-to-back games versus the Chargers at Carolina. Poor offensive output. Mariota's not throwing for 200 yards. They beat Chicago at home 27-24. Another just shocking win. Mariota has 20 pass attempts. Kyle Pitts has 3 catches, and they win. And this ends up being really good for the Bears, because if the Bears would have won this game, they wouldn't have the number 1 overall pick, which they do now. And of course, the number 1 overall pick will enable the Chicago Bears to trade back, as long as they keep Justin Fields, get more assets, and get Justin Fields, their young quarterback, more help. But Atlanta keeps doing this. They're winning these meaningless games. Marcus Mariota, at this point, we're at like week 12. He's still starting. Atlanta has zero chance of doing anything in the playoffs. They are completely wasting a season. Going back to their schedule, they lose to Washington on the road. They score 13 points. They lose to Pittsburgh at home. They score 16 points. And then week 15, they finally insert Desmond Ridder, and he gets 4 games. He ends up going 2-2. There's not good offensive output. You know, they had some games against tanking teams like Arizona where they beat the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are starting God knows who at this point. They're trying to lose with the Kyler Murray injury to get a better draft pick, and I applaud the Cardinals for doing it. I mean, they ended up with the number 3 overall pick, but can you guys understand my frustration with this team? And just, there's no vision for the future. They completely wasted a season. And you take a look at the end of it, as the dust settles, they've got the 8th overall pick, right? And, I mean, you take a look at this mock draft, Myles Murphy, man. I don't think this is going to happen, because I've been seeing Myles Murphy fall in every draft, and he probably should fall because, I mean, he's athletic, but he just didn't put up enough numbers at Clemson to really warrant a top 15 pick. But this would be just a terrible draft. In Atlanta, they're really back to square one. What is your quarterback situation? We don't know, because we don't know if Desmond Ridder is good enough, and it's not even a situation where Desmond Ridder came into the NFL raw. He started like 55 games at Cincinnati. He was a 4-year starter. You could have started him week 3 if you wanted to. You know, like, I understand teams want to win, but at some point you're doing your future selves a disservice by having no vision. You're starting a quarterback who's a stopgap. He's winning games that are completely meaningless, and you're hurting your future by doing this. It's just the one team that I have no clue what they were doing, and on top of it, they don't even have a good defense. Grady Jarrett led them in sacks. He had a grand total of 6 sacks. He's like one of their only good defensive players, especially pass rushers. I mean, I don't know what to make of the Atlanta Falcons, what their vision really was. I saw an article when I was researching for this video of Arthur Smith before the season, you know, going old school and saying, we're not trying to lose games. You know, tanking doesn't work and all that stuff. Yes, tanking does work. The Cincinnati Bengals tanked, got Joe Burrow. They went to the Super Bowl, and then they almost made the Super Bowl this past year, and they're a contender, and they're winning the AFC North. It does work, bro. It does. There's teams that do it, and take a look at Jacksonville, for example. Yes, it's not ideal losing all those games, but now they do at least have a young nucleus. Jacksonville's in a much better spot than Atlanta is. I know there's been talk about maybe Atlanta trades for Lamar Jackson, but it's like, you could maybe make that argument if they had a decent defense, but all of the assets, you're going to have to give up all your next future 3 first-round picks to trade for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's going to be taking up an absurd amount of salary cap space. You have a bad defense. You're going to have no draft picks to improve that defense. You know, and then the other thing, they finally got a top 5 pick, and they used it on a tight end. I know some people like Kyle Pitts. That's fine. You can like Kyle Pitts, but the position value of drafting a tight end in the top 5, it's horrible. You would figure they could have at least traded down a few spots and still gotten Kyle Pitts at like 7th or 8th in the draft. And then they draft Drake London. So they draft Kyle Pitts at 4. AJ Terrell's good. He's a really good corner. That was a good pick. Obviously that was in 2020. But you draft back-to-back skill position pass catchers in the top 10, and you run the ball more than you throw the ball with a quarterback who's a journeyman and who's not your future. It's just the one team where I can't understand what happened with the Atlanta Falcons. There is no vision at all with them. And I don't know what they do. Do they really mortgage the future to trade up? Do they hope maybe C.J. Stroud falls in their lap and they just move on from Desmond Ridder and count him off as a lost cause? Because, the good thing with Atlanta is it was only a 3rd-round pick you invested into him. So, it's understandable. And then to be fair to Atlanta, they did get a really bad break with the Calvin Ridley situation. That's just unfortunate. I believe they are getting a 2nd-round pick back for Calvin Ridley because they traded him to Jacksonville, and it was for like a 4th-rounder and a 2nd-rounder, but he had to, get unsuspended or get reinstated by the NFL for that 2nd-rounder to be active. And I believe, you would figure he's going to be back in the NFL, so they should at least get a 2nd-round pick for him. And that's just really unlucky. There's nothing you can do with the Calvin Ridley situation. He got busted for betting and he wanted a fresh start. And what are you going to do if you're Atlanta? You just got to try and get what you can get for him. Maybe you could have said, well, let's wait for him to get reinstated and then try and trade him, I guess. And maybe he has more value, but I'm not going to fault Atlanta for that. What I am going to fault them for is just completely throwing away a season. Throwing away a season, you're getting very little. What player on Atlanta really developed this year? Seriously. Can you say Drake London did? He just didn't get enough targets, Kyle Pitts. I don't know, man. I just think Atlanta threw away a season winning a bunch of close, fluky games that they probably shouldn't have won. And in turn, it enabled Marcus Mariota to start more games he shouldn't have been starting, and it, killed the possibility to see if Desmond Ridder is the future or not. And now you're the Atlanta Falcons, and you're sitting there saying, we can't go into next year starting Marcus Mariota. Do we start Desmond Ridder? I guess, but we don't know what Desmond Ridder is. Do we really want to throw away another season? If they draft Myles Murphy, man, you want to talk about a waste of a season. That would cap it off if they actually drafted him. So I don't know, guys. I didn't want to, roast them too much, but it's like every time I talk about the Atlanta Falcons, it's just I have no clue what they did this past season. I really don't. So we'll see if they can turn it around. They play in a dome, which is very attractive for quarterbacks. Maybe they do end up trading for Lamar Jackson, but again, I guess you've got Kyle Pitts, you've got Drake London, but the defense is very thin, and if you're trading for Lamar, you're giving up 3 first-round picks. You're not going to be able to improve that defense very easily because Lamar Jackson's going to take up so much of the cap space, and again, you're not going to have any of the first-round picks to use to draft defensive players. So, we'll see what happens to the Atlanta Falcons, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the one team in the NFL that I do not understand what they are doing. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.